Michael Dexter with us today on the podcast, and I'm super excited to dive into both business parts of open source and the community parts of open source because there are these two there simultaneously. But before we dive into all the open source topics and discussions, I would love our audience if they could get to know you, Michael, a little bit better. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like your tech background, and what do you do currently?
My name is Michael Dexter, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. I'm from Hollywood, and officially I provide Open ZFS support. But I've worn many, many hats and many community hats, and sometimes that's compensated, sometimes not, often not. um, I'm with my family of five, with five chickens and one cat. In tech, I believe I'm that generation where the first family PC was, I believe, an Apple II Plus with a cassette drive. And my first real computer was a Mac II CX, which was by all standards a very good workstation from a hardware perspective. And my parents were using the Apple II for uh, film budgeting, and it was a terrible system. But only come the later Macintosh, I think, wow, this is a meaningful system. I soon went off to college, and in January of 91, before the introduction of Linux, I sat down at what turned out to be a 4.3 BSD system and turned out to be using lots of things that we now call open source. But back then it was, I believe, pre-open source, to use the term. And coming from Hollywood, the moment I logged in, I saw that this is behind the scenes. This is inside the computer. The Mac had this nice, pretty desktop and the unreliability that goes with that. But the Unix system was it connected with me. I instantly recognized it and fell in love, if you will, and spent quite some time hoping to achieve that in my dorm room, which back then was a rather inconvenient, expensive adventure. Most any open-ish operating system at the time only worked on like Sun workstations, which were not affordable to a student. Um, I think the great explosion of Linux was simply the fact that you could put it on something you could afford at the time. I tried it on a 386 that someone found in the road, and it got as far as loading Linux, and I literally said to myself, I'll come back to you. Um, BSD was not yet ready for the PC. There may have, at the time, literally been the articles about, I think, Jolitz comporting to the PC, which that was coming from a Apple background as a user. I sure didn't want to get my hands that dirty just to get a shell prompt. Thank you very much. I just wanted instant gratification. So fast forward to after college, come Red Hat 5.2, they finally had an available product that matched their documentation. Portland's a Red Hat town. We've got Linus Torvalds. We had Interex back then, a company, I believe, hardening, or maybe I'm confusing that with another one, but some will know what I'm referring to. They were the cool local Linux company back before there were many options. And Red Hat 5.2 was a great little affordable workstation. It popped up in X terminals, and you could do your work there. And to my disappointment, there was the challenges and surprises of RPM, and there were the Red Hat 6 move to GNOME 1.0 or some early version, and that was not what I was after. I was not after a Windows clone. I was after a Unix workstation. So I addressed the issues with RPMs with FreeBSD jail a few years later in 2003-ish, FreeBSD 4.7, and was very excited about 5.0. And ever since that dust settled, I have been very involved in the BSD community, running in production FreeBSD, OpenBSD, NetBSD. And I just, that entire approach works for my mind. I'm maybe unique that way, but that has culminated, fast forwarding to the present, where I host what I call the trifecta calls, production user calls for jail and zones. Those are Lumos zones, and Open ZFS, which is available on many platforms. And I just hosted the Open ZFS User and Developer Summit here in Portland. And finally, the bhyve hypervisor, which is on both Illumos and FreeBSD, and has shown up in things like the Hacksum project in various ways, and it's sort of trickled out. I consider those very, very good, promising technologies, and they work very close together. And it takes a unified environment like FreeBSD offers to have them truly, truly integrated. And you are welcome to check out those recordings. They're linked from callfortesting.org. I'm not here to pitch, and it's non-commercial. It's completely transparent. It's a bit like this. So yeah, that's the open source aspect. I've been involved in Portland Linux Unix Group. I started attending in the late 90s. Met some wonderful people there. I then moved to Latvia and was a founding member of the Latvian Open Source Association, LACA, and I made the most of as I could in Latvia, but the secret to being in Europe was I could drop into FOSDEM and Linux Tag and Systems DE and all these events that were completely unobtainable from the West Coast USA. So I am eternally grateful that I was able to do that. So I returned to the US in 2009 with the economic surprises over there, and I've been rebuilding here and brought myself to the present I just described.